guys, welcome back to another episode of The Mind of Reese. Oh my gosh, it feels like I have lived a year in a week, and holy moly, I feel like I'm in a grounded space and also feel like I am, I don't know, I'm also just kind of like existing. Um, wow, if you've been in the trenches with me in the IG space, I had just gone through a really pretty life changing experience with having to pull my dad off life support last week. And this has been an interesting time of my life as me and my father really, were estranged for the past like I hadn't spoken to him since for 4 years, but we really weren't that close when I got into my like adulthood later in like my mid 20s because of the fact that I think we just had a lot of things going on and we had just had different beliefs. And I think in and of that, what ended up happening was that he just was going through a lot of things during that time. And it was really a decision I think that we both had made, and it wasn't like I didn't ever feel like I held a ton of resentment for that. I was like, okay, this is the family. I get to choose the family I have, and it doesn't mean that my blood family has to like I have to force a relationship when, it does take two people to tango, right? So getting a call, realizing my father had a heart attack, and then going and seeing him in the hospital and actually having a hope. There was like this dream, and I could feel it from my mom really wanting this dream to happen as well, was that he would get better and that we'd all have a better relationship. And growing up, my dad was my best friend. He was my absolute best friend. And it, of course, it like broke my heart to not have contact with him, but I had made peace with that, with all the therapy and just knowing that what I'm, all about with regards to just spiritual and mental health and well-being and vitality. And if things are not going to fill my cup, or it's going to feel like it's detracting from my energy, it's something I hold a boundary for. So when I wasn't, when there wasn't like it wasn't a two-way street for the relationship, it was okay. And as I'm sitting there in the hospital room and just like moving through that aspect of my father passing, it's just like of course it hits home. Like I'm a daddy's girl. Like I was a daddy's girl growing up. All those feelings started to bubble up, and here I am, realizing he's not actually going to get better. Then in the night, he ended up turning really, really fast, and his organs started to fail. And unfortunately, he didn't make it. And so we had to make the decision, or I actually had to make the decision that we would take him off life support. And I think I got lucky with that because I don't really think I made the decision. I am very, very, as you know, I'm a very spiritual human. So I kind of felt like his spiritual body had left his physical body. And so when we made that decision, I was like, I realized that it felt like he made it for me. And in all of this, I realized like how deep this work I've done gets to be put into play. It's almost as though I haven't really like almost quote unquote tested the amount of inner work that I've done on myself in order for me to truly understand how to grieve in a way that was conducive to my well-being. And we are in acceptance April right now, acceptance and self-concept April in the ARC, in the Align and Rise community, in my monthly membership right now. And it's like, what a month to have acceptance of all feelings, right? And so as I'm walking myself through this, I feel like, oh, wow, I'm grieving. I'm allowing myself to feel these things. I know that I know that I am absolutely within my right, and nobody would wrong me for canceling everything, for not showing up to work. But what's so interesting was that my business is so life-giving and purpose-fueled that it made me feel like I want my people to see me walk myself through this. Like, I want to see how I walk myself through this. Like, I want evidence that I've done this. And so for me, it was like, this is the work that I do, spiritual and mental well-being and vitality. Like, I believe that that brings you success and wealth in your business. And so I share vulnerably, I share all of it. And, there was a lot of like anger in some of the, like when it first happened, I was angry, and I was inconvenienced. Like, I felt, oh, this is such an inconvenience. I remember feeling that. I remember feeling relief when I realized, when my mom was telling me that my dad was in the hospital, when I found out it wasn't my stepdad and it was my biological dad. Like, the relief I felt that it wasn't my stepdad, and how much shame I had around all of these feelings. And by allowing myself to have them and even share them, because those aren't the parts that people want. It's like, those are the parts most people would be like, oh shit, like, you felt inconvenienced, you felt relief. Like, there was a lot of things going on in my body. And of course, like, there were moments where I wanted to shame them. And then there was absolute moments where I caught myself in the moment. And I said, no, there's no shame in everything that's happening right now. And by doing so, it was almost as though my grief started to alchemize, and I started to create and feel this creative innovation. And it was almost as though like my grief was leading me closer to God. It was like, oh my gosh, like I could feel myself closer to the universe and spirit. And I just felt so creative, and I wanted to share, and it felt life giving, because I was doing the work I say I do. This is the work that like literally brings me the success and wealth in my business. This is what I believe. And I'm in the trenches of it. I'm working myself through this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like like every day I've been saying since, I'm like, what a beautiful day to be alive. Like, the fact that I'm willing to go down to the depths of what I'm feeling, I know that only enriches the ups that I get to feel in this life. If I negate or suppress the downs because I'm so afraid of feeling them, because I don't want to feel them, I negate the ups. And I know that life and business is all a series of trade-offs. If I'm going to, trade off not feeling one feeling, I'm going to trade off not feeling another feeling. So if I'm going to trade my grief, my guilt, my shame, and suppress those feelings, I'm not going to feel the upside of the joy and the fulfillment on the other side. Like, I might get a taste of those things because I only give myself a taste of the deepening of those other feelings that we deem unacceptable, and or that society deems unacceptable. And it's like, where the fucking fun is that? Like, what a boring life to live if I'm not willing to go into the depths of my own human experience. I truly believe that my soul decided before, it came into this body that was like, oh, you know what? I want to experience heartbreak. I want to experience cancel culture. I want to experience death. I want to experience grief. I'm going to choose a list of things that I want to experience in this human experience. I want to choose a list of things that I'm going to go through in this particular human experience. All right, sign the dotted line, and we're born. You know what I mean? Like, I choose that because it really fuels purpose in my body to know that, like, all of these things I'm going through is for a reason. And it takes, and it's going to give me wisdom, right? Like, this what gets to give me wisdom. Now, having been through all of this and realizing, like, after releasing these feelings, after releasing myself from feeling, guilty or any of those, of any of that, when it comes to feeling like it's wrong to feel inconvenience, it's wrong to feel angry, it's wrong to feel relief, it's like releasing that ended up alchemizing, and I ended up feeling so much more creative. And in that moment, I was able to really like be with my father in a way that felt really life-giving for both of us. And although I couldn't have a conversation with him, it was so beautiful for me to just tell him that, like, I'm no longer angry, and that I'm sorry, and that I love him, and that I know that he's proud of me. And it was really interesting because on the day that we decided to take him off life support, I laid my head against his chest, and I remembered a photo of me when I was a baby reaching up and being like trying to grab his nipple, and I was like, yay, and I was laying on his belly. And I look up at my mom and I'm like, oh my gosh, mom, do you know where this photo is? And I described it to her and she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so what I ended up doing was just describing it to my dad. And I'm like in tears. My partner's in tears. Um, my dad and my mom are in tears, and it's just like a really beautiful moment right now. And I'm telling my dad this photo, and I'm just letting him know I love him, and I'm holding his hand as they're taking him off life support. And it was just like a beautiful closing and releasing of and releasing. And it was really cathartic. It's like I didn't even know that I had anger in my body, but then, there's always healing layers that we have within ourselves that we get to heal, deepening deeper and deeper layers and wounds of our own past, right? And so anything that, like, any emotion that gets triggered within me, I know is just like a compass for my growth, right? It's only showing me where I get to grow. So if I'm getting triggered with anger, I'm not going to shame the anger. I'm going to allow the feeling of the anger, and I'm going to allow it to alchemize and let myself feel it and utilize it from as momentum. And that's just something I believe in. I believe that we can absolutely alchemize our feelings and turn it into creative expression and gold. And I think that that's one of the most amazing, unique things as creatives and as artists that we have, is that we actually turn our emotions into art. We turn raw material, we turn nothing, we turn energy into art, into tangible art on people's bodies, on paper, on canvas. And this is where we really get to utilize our own emotions and turn them into something beautiful from a life-giving place, not from a place where a lot of, we're told like a lot of artists have to be in like the dregs of their souls and be depressed in order to really like be in the depths of their art and really to be, for it to be felt in a way, right? Like there's so many artists out there who like suicide and these kinds of things, and that's not what I want. I want to be able to create life-giving art, whether that be in content, whether that be in my writings, whether that be in my art, and so, or in my tattoos, really. And so this is where we get to like just choose. And that was my choice in that moment. And so letting him go, and then going to his house the next day to kind of deal with all the aftermath that happens with death. It's like I was looking through his house, and guess what photo I found? The photo of me laying on him. And it made me realize that I'm so connected to him, and I just continue to open myself up to be connected to the people that I'm close with, right? And for him to tell me basically that he was proud of me and he was always thinking about me made me feel really just amazing. And so coming out the back end of that, and then also just noticing that like I feel very sensitive. I can feel myself feeling very sensitive. I'm feeling myself feeling very triggered by people and scared. So next thing that happens is I end up going on a podcast. And I was on a podcast with, it is called Chats and Tats, with Aaron from Guru Tattoo, who's a 32-year tattooer, really big in the industry, well respected in the industry. And a couple of people actually mentioned my name to him, that was like, you need to meet her. You would love her. My tattoo artist and really, really good friend, Matt Tish, he's amazing. He mentioned it. And then also Ryan Roy, who also mentioned it to Aaron, that like we have to meet, and somehow like we're gonna be kindred spirits, we love each other, all this kind of stuff. So it's just like it was bound to happen. I actually go to his wife's esthetician studio, and I've been going to one of her studios for like years, and so it's just, of course, it was kismet. It was meant to be. It was gonna happen sooner or later. And in this, I knew he was going to ask me questions about my career and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I got this huge fear inside of my body, triggered fear in my body about sharing my story. Because although I am so, like, it's gotten really easy, right? I've gotten really confident because I've done the brave thing over and over and over again, which creates confidence. I bravely shared my voice about me taking tattoos that were not my own and posting them, and how I got canceled from the industry, and how I've, basically from that happening is my soul's mission in this world is unapologetic self-expression, truth, integrity, really utilizing your past as a fuel to your mission, because the things that we are so afraid to shine the light on is actually the biggest thing that brings us so much power, and it brings us our uniqueness, and is the reason why so many people will fall in love with you, is because of your bravery to share it. Right. And so for me, it was like, okay, I was so scared to share this with a 32-year male tattooer. And the reason is because it was a man tattooer that was old school that called me out. Right. And I've never said my story to anybody's face. I have always told my story via my own podcast or my platform. And very rarely do I tell it to strangers, people just, and definitely not to tattooers. Like, it's like when I do tell it to tattooers, it's in my own, like, I set the scene, I set the tone, it's in my container. They already know that they're here for spiritual growth and mental health. And so to do this, to go somewhere, to meet this person, knowing that he's very spiritual, but knowing that I don't know how he's going to react, and I just got to hold my ground and be grounded in this moment, it was like scary as fucking shit. I was so scared, you guys. Like, I was so incredibly freaked out. I wanted to cancel. I could feel myself wanting to cancel. I could feel myself dreading the day coming. And that earlier that day, I had thrown a masterclass. And as I'm asking who's here, who's new here, and if you've ever been in my classes, I'm always asking who's the OG, where are you from, where are you coming from? Who's an OG, who's been in my world before, and who hasn't. And I had no idea that there was going to be so many first timers in this, that I was like, oh my God. And so I had a plan to share the whole story, not only to share the story, but to ask people how they feel about it. I've never done that because I don't want to put myself up for fuel for fodder live. If someone was like, you're an asshole, I don't know why I'm here, fuck you, whatever, whatever it could have said. And honestly, there were a couple of things that were said that really, like, it definitely put me in a position where I felt activated in my body, like, oh my God, someone doesn't like me and they hate me now. And then all of a sudden cancel culture comes back into my mind. And, but I held myself in that moment. I continued to walk myself through, and I continued to honor the people and hold space for people to have their opinions. I respect it. I respect people's voice. I respect people's authenticity. If it's authentic and genuine for you to be like, well, can I trust this person? Which is something that someone said. Someone was like, I don't know if I could trust her. When I asked, how do you guys feel about my story? How do you guys feel about me saying that out loud? They're like, oh, well, can I trust her? Some people were like, that was so fucking brave. Oh my God, I can't believe it. When I first heard it, I was like, holy shit, did she just say that out loud? Oh, you're amazing. Like, it's just like, oh my God, to own your truth. Like, a lot of different opinions happening. But of course, the only one that we hyper focus on is the ones where we deem as negative. And then what happens when we hyper focus on that, if we don't get aware of that hyper focus, what we end up doing is self-sabotaging. So my greatest gift to myself was the moment was just to hold it and to honor it and to allow people to have their opinions and to hold space for it, but to also be grounded and have a boundary for myself, to know myself to be not that person, that my past is just wisdom and positive currency, but it doesn't dictate who I am and it doesn't define me. My past gets to give me wisdom to what I'm going to do or not do in the future. And it also gives me so much power because of the fact that I am willing to know that there is availability for change if people desire it deeply. And this is what gives me so much compassion for people who have done shitty things that they're not proud of, and giving them that space and grace to know that they're absolutely capable of real, beautiful change. And it's always these types of stories, especially if utilized within your own purpose, you're like, oh my gosh, like for me, that story haunted me for years, and it still does. I'm still triggered. I'm still having to hold that girl from 2016 that was completely canceled by the industry in these moments when I'm stepping into a new level. I'm stepping into a new level of the video game, right? I'm stepping into this new iteration of myself where I'm sharing myself, and there's always going to be new levels of that healing. And so when I'm sharing this online in a class, and people are saying how they feel about it, and of course there's going to be moments where I'm going to be activated by what people say, I can still hold myself and be grounded in the moment to allow them to speak their truth as I speak mine. And I believe that that's true sovereignty, because that's and it's true service, because sovereignty is service. So I'm holding myself in this, and then I'm literally driving down to San Diego to have this podcast episode, and I tell Aaron before we even start, like, he's like, well, asking me all these questions. He's like, is there anything I need to know? It's like, how you did your business? And I start telling him. And he looks at me, and I could feel my face getting hot. I could feel myself wanting to run. I could feel alarm bells in my whole body. I was just like, oh my God, protect, protect, protect. My ego is like, there is a lion. You need to go. You're going to get eaten. And I remember just taking a deep breath in and staring right at him, holding my ground, because I knew, I was like, I will not abandon myself in this moment. However his reaction is, I refuse to abandon myself or reject myself in this moment. I have come too far. And when he told me that was the bravest fucking thing he has ever had anybody do and is willing to do on a podcast episode for tattooers, he's telling his camera operator, he's like, let's go. Let's not let her say anything else. And I'm like, yay. But there's still the idea of all the listeners, because I actually don't even think, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I've ever said that story on someone else's podcast. I've only said it in my own platform, in my community, and I'm the one who sets the scene, right? Like, I set the tone, I set the scene, I know where I'm telling, I know who I'm telling. It's never been in like just a stranger or someone else's community and all their strangers, right? And so it's like, what real guts it takes to continue to hold your past self, your past iterations of you, always. But they don't define me, nor are they me. They are a part of me. And I don't shame that part of me, because I know that it has gotten me here. And that's where the true sovereignty, the true service to your community happens, is when you own all of you. Because when you do that, you own your world. And people want the permission to do the same. And that's why, trigger after trigger after trigger, your triggers are your compass to know where you're growing. That's all a trigger is. So if you are trying to suppress, to get rid of, to neglect, negate, all you're going to be doing is living in that trigger. You're going to relive your past every single day in the present moment, and you will avoid it like the Black Plague, because you do not want to feel it. But the more that we feel, the more that we heal, the faster we grow. And so this happens literally 4 days after I take my dad off life support, and I'm still holding my business. I'm still, I'm navigating, continuing to sell in BTS. I'm still here. There's 1 week left and all this stuff. And if I desire bigger impact, bigger community, more people in my programs, more amazing soulmate clients in my chair, I'm going to have to really understand that I'm going to have to hold the fact that people being triggered by me is going to trigger me as well, especially if I believe it to be true. That's why we get triggered, is because there's something that they're saying we believe is true about ourselves. And when I can get honest and radically own that shit, I don't blame them. I don't blame anybody for the way that I feel. I understand that my feelings are my own and that everybody has their fucking absolute right to tell you whatever they want to tell you. And however I react, I can't control. How I respond to myself and to them, that I can control. Coming home to ourselves is the hardest thing. It's probably a 1%er thing. Most people that are not self-aware just blame everybody and everything outside of them for the reasons why they feel the way that they feel. And even when someone comes to you and starts telling you this is how they feel, and you can tell, it's just like maybe it's just their triggers and they're feeling like they're being abandoned, or they're feeling like there's something happening and they, there's change happening and maybe they don't like it. You know what I mean? It's like we get to hold them in that. And we can hold a boundary as well. But we get to have a lot of fucking compassion. And so it's like this week for me is like acceptance, compassion, and celebrate my triggers. So if there's one thing that I'm going to leave you with, it's just that. Celebrate the motherfucking triggers. Because if we don't heal, triggers feel like a reality and we stay stuck in it. We stay stuck exactly where we are if we don't recognize that we're in a trigger. And then that's when we end up self-sabotaging. We're like, oh no, I'm triggered by spending money. Okay, I'm self-sabotaging. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to spend any money. I'm not going to invest in myself. I'm not going to do whatever. Or you stay in a trigger for something else. It's like triggers are the foundation of curiosity and compassion. So you just got to realize that, yes, the triggers are intense. They feel repetitive. That's what happens. So it's like someone tells you no, or they're canceling, or they're saying, you're like, oh, it's a no to me, it's a no to my art, and you pull back. That's self-sabotaging. When someone doesn't answer your message, you spiral, you snap. That's self-sabotaging. So responding to past experiences and bringing unprocessed emotions into the present blurs your reality. Your mind's instinct is trying to keep you safe and avoiding triggers. This is what produces negative experiences. This is why less self-aware people will always suppress their triggers. This is a fucking terrible idea for the long game, because triggers will just happen over and over and over again. Like when the women are like, oh, I don't know why I always attract, shitty men, or our guys are like, I don't know why I always attract crazy women. It's like, we got to look at the common denominator here. So we got to celebrate the triggers. There's no real threat. You know that because you know it's stemming from an unprocessed past emotion, unprocessed past feeling. So you know there's no real threat in the current moment. It's just surfacing old things that you can finally heal. And all it's offering is it's giving you guidance on where you need to give attention, love, and healing to for yourself. And understanding that the person in front of you, the experience in front of you, is not to blame. Right? They're not to blame. We just have to take radical ownership and radical personal responsibility for our stuff. And then this is our opportunity to heal so that we can expand and grow and call in more of what we truly do desire to call in. I love you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you in the next episode.